All right, I will say good morning. Let us begin. I want to begin by thanking our sponsors for today's shir, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Kislev, Sammy and Malka Esterson, for dedicating all the shurim and drushos this month in memory of their parents, Yitzchak, Laib, and Aharon HaKohen, Sarah, Rachel, Bas, Baruch, Avraham, Hinda, Bas, Henech, Efraim. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the neshamas will have an aliyah and the family a nechama. We thank our week of learning sponsors, Michoel and Sarah Lipman of Los Angeles, and family in honor of Phillip Sanfield's Siyum HaShas. Phillip made his Siyum HaShas, Baruch Hashem, this past Shabbos. May Phillip and his wife Judy merit to make many more Siyumim and continue to inspire us all with their Torah and Maasim Tovim and Mazal Tov. Shir today is dedicated by Saeed and Simahaikin in memory of Mr. Daniel Langbaum, Zichron Lebracha, Daniel Ben Elchanan Halevi, as well as in memory of Steve Golaskov's father, Nathan Sander Golaskov. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the neshamas will have an aliyah and the families a nechama. And I also, it's, I'm always hesitant with these things, The Gemara says that a person is never supposed to chas v'shalom be like the bearer of bad news. Some people run to share bad news because but the Chazal tell us a person is never so. I don't know, Menachem just told me after davening this morning that there was a terror attack in Yerushalayim this morning in the old city, which left one person dead and 3 people injured. And it's always an overwhelming thing whenever Klal Yisrael suffers a loss. But the truth is, when you see a loss of life and you see such tragedy, just steps away from the holiest place in the entire world, it's overwhelming. And the truth is, it shakes us to our core. So we should hope that the neshama that was taken from us should have an aliyah. Those who were injured in the attack should have a refuah shalema, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should finally see fit to usher in a period of shalom, to usher in a period of tranquility, of achdus, and of just bracha for Klal Yisrael with the coming of Mashiach and Rabbi Aminu. Amen. So also with that, let us begin. We have a beautiful, beautiful daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Tes, and we are picking up in Meretz Hashem Tan Rabbanon. We left off 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines up from the bottom. So Tan Rabbanon, the Gemara says, Tan Rabbanon hanichnas lamud askurono. So a person goes in to go ahead and measure his granary. So we'll say here, what's happening here is I'm going ahead and I want to see what my bounty is. Right? So I'm going to measure my crop. So what's the halacha? Omer yiratzam lofanecha Hashem Elokeinu shetishlach bracha b'ma'aseh yadina. Both say this is so beautiful. So a person says a tefillah. And what's the tefillah? The tefillah is, it should be your will Hashem that you should send blessing in our handiwork, in what we create. Hischel lamud, when you begin to measure, you begin to really, and lamud measure, in other words, you're taking stock, you're taking inventory of how much produce you have. Omer, Baruch hasholech bracha b'kriyazeh. Blessed is the one who sends blessing in this pile. Now, the Gemara says, Madad va'achar kach beirach, but if you first measured what you have, and then you make the bracha, hareza tfilas shav. Ultimately, again, this is a blessing in vain. I will say this is a continuation of the theme we began yesterday. L'tishein habracha mitzuya lo b'davar hashakol, v'lo b'davar hamadud, v'lo b'davar hamanui, elo b'davar hasama min ha'ayin. Because blessing is not found in something that is measured, in something that is, right, something that is weighed out, weighed, measured, or counted. Rather, blessing is only found in something which is obscured from the eye. Rabbi said the idea being, again, we did this in yesterday's daf, but the idea being that if you want HaKadosh Baruch Hu to go ahead and make miracles happen for you, you have to leave him, so to speak, a little bit of room. If you're too exacting in every single thing, you leave no room for the Ribono Shel Olam to affect miraculous results. So the Gemara says, farmer, once you measure, once you know you have X number of tons of grain, that's it. It is what it is. God doesn't take 5 tons and make it into 6 tons. But if at the end of the day, before you measured, you don't yet know what you have, then you leave room for the Ribono Shel Olam to be able to affect some miraculous effect. I will say it's an incredible yesod in life. You see, the Gemara is not telling you not to be like a measured, well thought out person. What the Gemara is saying is, Be the kind of person who recognizes. See, some of us like to go through life and we like to think that we control all the variables. So if you think you control all of the variables, you leave no room for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to affect his miraculous results. But if I recognize that at the end of the day, I put in my hishtadlus, I do my part, but I have to leave a room for the Ribono Shel Olam to do his thing. My success is not solely limited to the effort I expend. My success is not limited to the amount of work I put in. My work, my hishtadlus, my effort is part of it. But what the Gemara is saying is, you have to leave room for HaKadosh Baruch Hu each and every day. So the idea over here, for the farmer, the way the farmer leaves room for God is he prays for success before he measures his produce. Because that gives HaKadosh Baruch Hu the ability to go ahead and affect some type of miraculous results. We both say, for those of us who aren't farmers, what it means is at the end of the day, maybe before you are, or at the end of the day, when you're doing your taxes or whatever else, you want to go ahead and you want to figure out how much money you made for the year. Before you do that, this is the tefillah. By the way, this tefillah is recorded in Shulchan Aruch. This is not like an Agarata Gemara. This is Halacha Gemara. This Halacha is recorded in Shulchan Aruch. This is what the farmer would say, the bracha that the farmer would say. This seems the Mishnah Berurah says that you say it without the name of Hashem. That's the whole other discussion. Again, not our topic for today, but you would say without the name of Hashem. But the point over here is there is a bracha. There is a bracha that you say before measuring out your produce, where you ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, provide me with something miraculous. Bless this. Whatever is in the silo is in the silo. Not necessarily. Whatever is in the silo can be expanded as long as you give room for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want to say the yesod and the important thing of making room for HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our success. Sometimes we don't even realize it, but we think that our success is fundamentally hinges on us. And that's why, by the way, so many times we make the fatal mistake of cutting corners with our ruchnius in order to be successful in our gashnius. And the truth is, it never works. Because when I cut corners in my ruchnius to be successful with my gashnius, essentially what I'm saying is, my success is totally and fully dependent on me. It's all about me. So that's why, again, I could cut corners with my ruchnius because I have to be successful. Hallelujah, we all should be successful. But we have to realize that part of our success is leaving room for HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that process. Incredible Gemara. Let's go weiter. So Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan, the day of rain is as great as the day of the ingathering of the exile. That literally, again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will return our returnees, ka'afikim banegev. What's afikim banegev? Ve'en afikim ela matar. Afikim means rain. So I'll say, so the way to read the pasuk is, Shuva Hashem eshivisenu. Hashem will return our returnees, ka'afikim banegev, like rain in the field. Like rain in the field. So you see that the Torah is going ahead and equating rain with kibbutz galios. Shnem, so the Gemara says, Shneamar vayiru afike yam. Rabbi Yochanan God yom geshem shafilu gayasas poskosbo. So Rabbi Yochanan says rain is great because even armies, mighty armies, are brought to a halt by the rain. Right? Isn't this interesting? Obviously, it's a historical statement, but when armies were marching, the rain got a little bit too intense. It slowed down the army. Shneamar quotes over here the pasuk Tila meha ravei nachas gidudeh berevivim timogegnot simcha tevarech. Rabbi Yochanan, was a very profound Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu withholds rain because of people who pledge tzedakah in public, but do not go ahead and give it. Do not go ahead and give it. So we'll say, what's the connection over here? Shnei Amar quotes over here the pasuk Nesim v'ruach v'geshem ayin ish maschil b'matas sheker. So we'll say it's actually a profound idea. See, people go ahead and pledge tzedakah and don't pay up their pledges. And again, it's interesting, by the way. We'll say in general, if you make a commitment to tzedakah, you have to pay it. And you're supposed to pay it expeditiously, right? If you make, that's a nether. You're supposed to go ahead and fulfill it. Whatever you owe, pay. If you notice, by the way, the Gemara is not saying a person who makes a pledge and doesn't pay. It's public. A person who makes a public pledge and doesn't pay. So the idea is you promised something to the tzibor. You promise whoever you're pledging to. Like you promise something to the tzibor publicly. So, and yet you're not giving it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll withhold the rain. I promise something to the tzibor also. It's called rain. And if you're not making good on your pledge, I'm not going to make good on my pledge. It's an incredible yesod, by the way. We see this over and over and over, that it's the nature of reciprocity in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh who says, Hashem tzilcha. Hashem is your shadow. What does it mean Hashem is your shadow? Whatever I do, my shadow does. Our relationship, the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu interacts with the world and with us, is based on how we interact with Him. Such an incredible Yisrael. We'll say, here we go. Incredible Gemara, top of test. Aser ta'aser. So the pasuk says, you shall tithe, right? This is the pasuk about tithing. Aser ta'aser. So the Gemara dashins, aser b'shil shatit asher. Now we'll say, tzedakah, you can give tzedakah on the condition that you get rich. Right? You can get aser ta'aser, asher b'shil shatit asher. Give tzedakah, and you could give tzedakah with the mindset that I'm giving tzedakah in order that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give me wealth. Ashkeche Rabbi Yochanan liyinukid Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan once came across the son of Reish Lakish. And I will say, remember the story. Reish Lakish was a bandit, right? Was a robber. Rabbi Yochanan was the one who convinced him to be Chozer B'tshuva. So Reish Lakish said, fine, I'll do it, but I want to marry your sister. Rabbi Yochanan had a very beautiful sister, right? And Rabbi Yochanan said, okay. So Reish Lakish was Rabbi Yochanan's brother-in-law. Reish Lakish died early. We'll discuss that in just a little bit. So the boy, this is Reish Lakish's son, who also remembers. So he's what? He's Rabbi Yochanan's nephew. Rabbi Yochanan's nephew. So Rabbi Yochanan goes out and comes across this boy, the son of Reish Lakish. Amar le, emali psukeich. He says to the little boy, tell me, what are you learning? What are you learning? Amar le, aser ta'aser. So he said, I'm learning the pasuk of aser ta'aser. Amar le, umay aser ta'aser. So both say, so now the little boy, the young boy, asked Rabbi Yochanan, by the way, what's the meaning of aser ta'aser? What he was asking is, why the double lashon? Right? Aser ta'aser we translate as tithe, or in English is like, you shall surely tithe. Right? But just say ta'aser or aser. You don't need a double lashon. So Rabbi Yochanan responds, aser b'shil shatit asher. The drasha is tithe. Take your tzedakah. Now again, I will say, it's obviously not Shumas and Maestros, but take your tzedakah, and you could do it with the condition that you'll become wealthy. Amar le minalach. So the little boy said to Rabbi Yochanan, how do you know that's the drasha? Right? How do you know this? Amar le zil nisi. Rabbi Yochanan says, go try it. Go try it and you'll see. Right? Go try it out. Amar le, so the little boy says, are you allowed to test HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Are you allowed to do that? Right? You're allowed to go ahead and do a mitzvah on the condition that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give you something. V'aksiv lo sinasu es Hashem. The pasuk says, you shall not test Hashem. We never do mitzvos with the idea of going ahead and say, I'm going to do this, God, but I'll do this if you do this for me. So Rabbi Yochanan said, my Rabbi Oshia said as follows, Chutz mizu. You're right. In general, in Gantz Torah, you are not allowed to test HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Here is the one exception. Tzedakah, Rabbosai, is the one exception where you are permitted to go ahead and give tzedakah on the condition that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give you back monetary wealth. Now, where do we get this idea that tzedakah is the exception? Shnei Amar, Rabbi say this is so truly beautiful. The pasuk in Malachi, Haviu es kol ha'ma'aser al beis ha'otzar, v'yiteref bebeisi. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Klal Yisrael, bring all the tithes. The Navi says, bring all the tithes to the Beis Hamikdash. V'yiteref bebeisi, ubechanuni na bizos amar Hashem tzavakos. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you can test me. Ubechanuni, test me, like a bechina. You can test me with this. Im lo eftach lochem es arubas hashamayim, I will open up for you the storehouses in the heavens. Varikosi lochem bracha ad belidai, and I will give you blessing ad belidai. The Gemara says, "My ad belidai." What does that phrase mean? Ad belidai. Amar mivarchama amarav ad shivlu sifsosechem milomardai. Until literally again your lips tire from saying enough. So I will say here the Mefurish pasuk in Malachi that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, "Obechanuni na bezos." Test me. I'm telling you, test me. Test me. Give as much tzedakah as you possibly can, and you could do it with the intention that I will reward you with material wealth. Test me, right? Call me on it, and you will see that as Shabbos. And obviously, we know that in Hilchos tzedakah there is a cap as to how much one is permitted to give away, right? Chazal said you're not allowed to divest yourself of more than 1/5 of your wealth. There's a cap on tzedakah. But again, obviously up until that measure, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says is the one exception. There's no other situation where a person is able to say, I'm going to do a mitzvah on the condition, God, that you give me something. In fact, it's theologically flawed to take an approach like that. The only mitzvah you can do it is by tzedakah. By tzedakah. So we'll say it's interesting. So why tzedakah? Right? Why tzedakah? So it's fascinating. I think HaKadosh Baruch Hu understands that tzedakah is one of the hardest things for us to do. See, I will say, tzedakah is not generally hard if you have a lot of money, because the tzedakah you're going to give doesn't. But if a person say a person has money, but a person doesn't have a lot of money, tzedakah is really difficult. Why? Because you're taking something that you've worked hard for, that you've worked really hard for, and that the truth is you need. Somebody tells me to go ahead and share my Shabbos leftovers, no problem, right? Absolutely, especially by Tuesday, right? Happy to. Because ask me to share something that I don't feel so strongly about. Like when we speak about sharing your skills or sharing your time, okay. But money is a very sensitive thing. Because A, we all need it. B, as from Jews, we need a lot of it, right? And C, we work really hard for it. So when some HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells me, I want you to take that which you made, and I want you to share it with someone else, that's hard. That's hard. But I will say, because it's hard, remember, sharing our money is also the way we show we didn't make it. We put it in the hishtadlus. But whatever is in my pocket is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to me. I am the custodian of His wealth. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, well, if you're the custodian of my wealth, I'm telling you to share it. And because tzedakah is so difficult, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives this promise that He doesn't give by any other mitzvah. Do it, give it. And give it with the intention that you'll get back more. And I promise I'll honor that commitment. It's really an incredible yisod. So the Gemara goes out to Amrlei. So this is interesting. So remember, this whole thing is an exchange between Rabbi Yochanan and his young nephew. So the little boy says, Amrlei, ihavis mati hasam, lai psuk, lahavis tzrichna, lecha ulohoshirabach. So the little boy says to Rabbi Yochanan, had I gotten up to that pasuk in Malachi, I wouldn't have needed you or Hoshea, your Rebbe. There was a little boy who was saying, Shkoyach, you didn't give me any deep insight. You told me a pasuk. I'm little. I didn't get up to the pasuk. Quite a precocious young man. Right? I did not get up to that pasuk yet. So, okay, had I learned it in yeshiva, I wouldn't have needed you, nor would I have needed your Rebbe. Visu, Ashkechei Rabbi Yochanan leYunuka Reish Lakish. So we'll say Rabbi Yochanan, another exchange between Rabbi Yochanan and his young nephew, the son of Reish Lakish. The Yasiv Amar, Korbose is incredible. The pasuk says, "Ivelas Adam Tisalev Darko va'al Hashem Yizaf Libo." The pasuk in Mishlei says, "The foolishness of man will cause his path to be destroyed, but yet he blames Hashem. He blames va'al Hashem Yizaf Libo, but yet his heart blames God." In other words, we'll say, sometimes bad things happen to us in life as a result of bad decisions we have made. But even when I see that bad things befall me as a result of bad decisions I have made, often we still tend to blame it on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Gemara says, Yasiv va'amar, Darga ba'alasha, Yasiv Rabbi Yochanan v'kametame. So Rabbi Yochanan was sitting and pondering this pasuk. Amar, mi'ika midi dichsiva v'ksuvi, d'lo remisi ba'araisa. Is there any pasuk that's in Nevi'im and Ksuvim that's not alluded to in the Torah? So the Shalom Melech Mishnah is describing a dynamic that I get myself into trouble because of bad life decisions I have made, and I blame God for the results. So that's a pasuk in Mishnah. Is there a pasuk in the Torah that makes reference to that? So the Gemara says, Amrele, Atu ha-milo ramizi. So the little boy says to Rabbi Yochanan, he says, right, uncle, of course it's alluded to. Vaksiv, vayetzi libam vayachadu ish el achiv lemor mazos asa elokim lanu. So we'll say, isn't this incredible? This is this week's next week, right? Next week's parsha. The brothers, right, are face to face with Yosef, trying to buy grain. Yosef has not revealed his identity. He's mamish putting them through the ringer, right? And they say to themselves, they get all upset when Yosef takes two of the brothers prisoner, and they say, "Look what God has done to us. Look what God has done to us. You sold your brother." You sold your brother, right? You sold your brother, and you told your father, or you allowed your father to believe that Yosef was killed by a wild animal. What do you mean? What did God do to you? I will say, I just want to tell you, there is an incredible musar in this, because often you find people in difficult circumstances, and we're very quick to point an accusatory finger towards God. But the truth is, the real difficult thing in life is that sometimes when overwhelming circumstances happen, I have to introspect. And now it doesn't mean that every single time that something negative occurs, it's because of something that I've done. But the first step in dealing with life setback is, okay, what happened here? Like, what happened? Is there something that I need to introspect about, right? It's always easy, and it's almost like reflexive, to blame other people and to blame God whenever I have setback. But sometimes, again, the difficult thing is, I gotta look inward. Is there something amiss? Is there something wrong? Is there something broken? Is there something that perhaps I have been doing or could have done that could have led me to this particular point? Sometimes the answer is no. And sometimes things happen in life for a variety of different reasons. But the first step in dealing with adversity is introspection. So listen to this. So this is the little boy that ends this Rabbi Yochanan. Dal einai the chazibeh. So what happened? Rabbi Yochanan lifted his eyes and he looked at the little boy. Now the look that he gave him was almost like a little bit of like a strong glance, because you could see, it seems like the boy has a shtickle chutzpah, right? A little kid. It sounds like there's a. So Rabbi Yochanan looked at him like, what do they say? Looked askance? Is that the right? He looked at him. He gave him a look. So watch this. Asya ime afikse. The little boy's mother came, Rish Lakish's widow, came and grabbed the boy. Amrale, Tommy, come quick, come with me. I don't want Rabbi Yochanan to do to you what he did to your father. Now, I will say, so the story over here is, should we remember again, as I mentioned before, Rabbi Yochanan was one of those Makari Rish Lakish. So the Gemara records a very strained exchange between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, where Rish Lakish seemed to hint at the idea that Rabbi Yochanan didn't do him such a big favor by being Makari of him. Right? Now the truth is, that's not what Rabbi Rish Lakish meant, but it's how Rabbi Yochanan interpreted. Rabbi Yochanan shot Rish Lakish a glance. Rish Lakish became ill and ultimately died as a result of that illness. So again, so Rabbi Yochanan, who was one of those Makari of Rish Lakish, also somewhat had to do with the demise of Rish Lakish, who also happened to be his brother-in-law. So now he's having a very sharp exchange with his nephew, Rish Lakish's son. So the boy's mother, Rish Lakish's widow, gets a little bit nervous about the nature or the tone of this exchange, and goes ahead and takes it. I will say, there's so much more to say about this relationship, Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, and this kind of falling out between the two of them, but not for today. Not for today. The Gemara goes weiter. Rabbi Yochanan, Bishvil Yochid Matar Bishvil Yochid Parnasa Bishvil Rab. Most is very interesting. Rain is brought even for one person, which I will say means, Rashi says as follows: even if one person needs rain, but everyone else doesn't need rain, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will still bring rain. Parnasa, on the other hand, Parnasa, and I will say, what does Parnasa mean? Parnasa refers, let's say, to the general volume in the world of wheat, right, of produce. Produce, right, additional produce is not brought for one person, but rather, again, that's brought for the world. If you look at Rashi says over here, Matar b'shil yachid, shem ein tzarech matar ela li adam echad. Right, let's say only one person needs rain. Ultimately, again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will go ahead and bring rain. However, again, I'll say, if you skip down a little bit, Rashi says, Ela b'shlo rabim, shim rabim tzrichim sova, shetishlach bracha betvua, HaKadosh Baruch Hu osem zachu. Aval yochid atzarech sheis baruch hu tvua, sav inach baruch. Supposed to listen to this. Apparently, when it comes to what we call parnasa, so parnasa means what's called the global output of produce. The global output of produce is determined by the needs of the rabbim. Right? So if the rabbim deserve greater parnasa, they'll get greater parnasa. But the individual, ultimately, again, if he needs more parnasa, but other people don't, he won't get it. I will say, let's talk about this just a moment, because this is really fascinating. Because we saw back in Rosh Hashanah, right? Mizonosav shel adam kitzuvin lo me Rosh Hashanah. The idea being that a person's parnasa is established from Rosh Hashanah, which indicates to us that each of us get our own judgment for parnasa, for livelihood. Here it says, the Gemara seems to say, that parnasa does not really gauged by the yachid, but it's gauged by the rabbim. So understand what's happening over here. What the Gemara is saying is like this: if there is an individual who needs more rain, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will actively bring more rain. If there's one person who needs more parnasa, needs more wheat, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to bring more wheat into the world. Now, what can he do? He can go ahead and kind of shift the allocations a little bit, right? So Reuven was supposed to have X, Shimon was supposed to have Y. HaKadosh Baruch Hu could go ahead and shift that. Or HaKadosh Baruch Hu could go ahead and The idea is, though, the amount of parnasa is locked in unless the tzibor needs it to change. If the collective needs it to change, then the amount of parnasa will change. If the yochid needs it to change, ultimately, again, it will not change. So the Gemara says, it's really incredible. How do we know? So rain comes even for an individual. Yiftach Hashem lechas al tzaro hatov, lo seis mitar artzicha. Because we'll say the Pasuk says Hashem will open up his storehouses to give you mitar artzicha, the rain of your land. So rain is very personal. If I need rain, even if you don't need rain, if I daven for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, give me rain. Parnasa b'shel rabim dichsev, hineni mamtir lachem lechem. Both said the pasuk says, "Behold, I will shower forth for you bread." Plural. So parnasa, the needs of parnasa are determined by the collective. Rain could even be given to the individual. Meisvei is this trouble. So listen to this beautiful Gemara. Rabbi Yossi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yossi Yehuda says, "Shlosha parnasim tovim amdu liYisrael." There are three great leaders for Klal Yisrael: Elohein, Moshe, Aaron, Miriam. V'gimel matanos tovos nitnu al yodam. Three gifts were given to Klal Yisrael through these three great people. And what were the three gifts? The Elohein, Be'er, Anon, Uman. The well, which accompanied the Jewish people in the desert. The Anon, the cloud, which hovered over us in the desert. And the man which sustained us in the desert. Be'er bischus Miriam. The well came in the schus of Miriam. Amod Anon bischus Aharon. The cloud came because of Aharon. Man bischus Moshe. And the man came in the merit of Moshe. So we'll say, so first of all, just say, well, let's finish. Mesa Miriam. Miriam died, Nistalik HaBe'er. So the well went away. Shnei Amar, Vatamas Sham Miriam. Torah records Miriam died. Uksib Basrei, V'lo Haya Mayim Le'ida. There was no water. So right, well, why? Because right after she died, the well disappeared. V'chazra b'schos Shneihen. But then Moshe and Aaron, their combined merit, brought back the well. Mace Aaron died. Nistakon ani akaved. The clouds of glory departed. What's it in Rosh Hashanah? Shnei Amar, Vayishma Knani Melech Arad. So the king of Arad heard. Mashmua Shama. What did he hear? Shama Shemes Aaron. V'nistakon ani akaved. He heard that Aaron died, and as a result, the clouds of glory dispersed. And he took that to mean that now he would have the power to wage war against Klal Yisrael. So the pasuk says the entire congregation saw that Aaron died. Right? Vayirau. Don't say ultimately that they saw, but rather what? They were seen. Why were they seen? Because when Aaron died, the clouds dispersed. Kidrei Shlakish, Damrei Shlakish, Ki, Mishamis ve'Abra Lashanos, Oi Dilma Ella Daha. Chazu Shneim b'schus Moshe. Ultimately, again, but then, so we'll say, so now when Aaron died, both the Be'er as well as the Anon were restored to Klal Yisrael on the schus of Moshe. Meis Moshe, when Moshe Rabbeinu died, Nistalku Kulon. All three were lost. Shnei Amar va'achid es shloshes haroim b'yarach echad. So we'll say, it's actually quite interesting. The pasuk says here in Zechariah, literally again, I will take away from you the three leaders, or I will destroy the three leaders in Biyarach Echad, in the same month. So we'll say, the three leaders are referenced to Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. Did Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam die in the same month? No. Follow Miriam, Mesa, ben Nisan. Miriam died in Nisan. Aaron died in Av. Moshe ba'adar. So why does it say that I'll take the three leaders in 1 month? Ela melamed shenispatlu gimel matanos tova shenasnu al yadan v'nistalku kulan biyarach echad. The idea we'll say is that what? Ultimately, again, all three of the gifts, all three of the matanos disappeared in 1 month. When was that? When Moshe Rabbeinu died in Adar, the Man, the Be'er, and the Anan all disappeared. So we'll say, so okay, this is beautiful, but what do you see from here? You see from here that the Man, which represents Parnasa, was brought down in the merit of Moshe. So you see that one person can affect Parnasa. So the Gemara says, Alma ashkechan Parnasa b'shvil yochid. Ultimately, Parnasa came down to the world in the merit of one person. Shiny Moshe, Kevin de l'Rabim hu boy, kirabim dami. So Moshe is actually quite beautiful. Moshe Rabbeinu is different. Why is Moshe Rabbeinu different? Because ultimately, again, since he was needed by the Rabbim, ultimately, again, he was like the Rabbim. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have the identity of a Yachid. Moshe Rabbeinu had the identity of a Rabbim, of a collective. But I will say, but if you look at the Lashon of the Gemara, it's really actually quite beautiful. The Chagos at Siyumim changes the girsa here to say Shiny Moshe Kevan Da'alim Zechuso Kirabim Damu. So it's changed it that since Moshe Rabbeinu has such great zechuyos, such great merit, he was like the Rabbim. But the truth is, if you look at the actual wording of the Gemara, it's actually quite profound. Why is Moshe Rabbeinu different? Kevan de Rabbim Hubai, since he was needed by the masses, ultimately Kirabim Dami. He was like a Rabbim, which I will say tells you something so incredibly amazing. The way to transform yourself from a Yachid to a Rabbim is be the kind of person who is needed by the community. If you make yourself needed by the Rabbim, which means if you contribute in a way that people don't see you just as an individual, but people see you as a community person, someone who doesn't just do for himself, but does for the community, then you assume the identity of the Rabbim. Isn't that an incredible yesod? And I've also understand what that means, by the way? Do you understand what that means? When you no longer have the identity of a Yachid, you have the identity of a Rabbim. You know what that means? You know what that means? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu will change the laws of Parnasa just for you. Right? Because remember again, what the Gemara says over here is HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give rain to individuals, but he doesn't change the laws of Parnasa for individuals, only for the collective. But if a person transforms himself from a Yachid to a Rabbim by living the kind of life that I devote myself to the collective, I devote myself to the needs of those around me. I don't just live in my Dalit Amis, but I figure out some way to enhance my community, to enhance my kehilla, to enhance my world. I transform myself from a Yachid to a Rabbim, then I have the ability to affect change in my Parnasa as well. Incredible. So I will say, just say for a moment, it's interesting. What's the connection between these three miracles and these three people? Right? So the truth is, 2 out of the 3 make sense. The idea that the be'er, that the well, comes in the schus of Miriam, that makes sense. Why? Because remember again, this harkens back to the fact that Miriam was the one who watched over Moshe Rabbeinu when he was set afloat in the Nile. Right? She stands by the body of water, therefore again, Klal Yisrael is given water in her merit. Man, in the schus of Moshe, also makes sense. Moshe Rabbeinu gave us Torah, spiritual sustenance, and therefore again, in his schus, we also get physical sustenance. What's the connection between the clouds and Aharon? So I think I mentioned this before, but Rabbi Yisrael of Rizhin, the Heilige Rizhiner, says something so beautiful. He says, what was Aaron's midah? Aaron was Oiv Shalom V'Rodev Shalom. Aaron was the one, ultimately, again, who always made peace within Klal Yisrael. But again, not just made peace, he actively pursued peace. So the Rizhiner says something so beautiful. He said, do you know what the clouds were created from? They were created from the Hevel Pihem, from the breath of the words of Shalom of Klal Yisrael. Aaron encouraged people to talk nicely to each other. Aaron encouraged people to say Shalom Aleichem to each other. Aaron encouraged people to be friendly. Aaron encouraged people to settle, to resolve disputes. And the breath that came out from those words of Shalom, the breath that came out from those words of friendship, that breath, all of that breath, that collective breath, came together and formed the Anani HaKavod. So we sometimes think that words don't really have such an impact. We know that to be unequivocally false in general, but we only seem to look at the power of harmful words. But the power of positive words is immeasurable. It's positive words that created the Anani HaKavod for our ancestors in the desert. It's the positive words that protected us from every single external threat. It's the positive words that formed the Anani HaKavod. I both say the power of positive speech, the power of words of friendship, the power of words of encouragement, the power of a Shalom Aleichem, the power of a Git Shabbos to someone who you don't know on Shabbos. The power, I will say, I just mentioned this stuff because it's so important. There are so many people in life who live life on the margins, and they live life on the periphery. And you wouldn't know it because they look like pretty normal people, right? They look fine, but they feel like outcasts deep down, or they feel marginalized for a variety of different reasons. And they go through life and no one ever reaches out. And they're not going to be the kind of people who engage you. But Lamaisi, you see someone on a Shabbos and they're a little bit to themselves. You go over and you wish them a good Shabbos. You go over and you say Shalom Aleichem, a Siddur, a Kiddush, a L'chaim, or 3. Whatever, right? Whatever you do to engage someone, It's so incredibly important. It's so incredibly important. It can make the difference in a person's life. And not only that, it creates the anane hakavod. We'll say that's how we create protective clouds around Klal Yisrael. People always think that we have to do big things as a nation in order to affect Yeshua's divine salvation. Do you know what we have to do to affect divine salvation? The only thing we have to do to affect divine salvation, really the only thing, is we have to be nice. We have to be nice. We have to be nice. We'll say, isn't it tragic that so often, we find that we're attacking each other. We're attacking each other, and it comes sometimes even from very great people who attack other segments of Yiddishkeit, who do this, who do that. Lord said this one attacks this one attacks. I'll tell you, I dread every Rosh Chodesh. I'm just going to tell you, I dread Rosh Chodesh. I dread Rosh Chodesh. Do you know what happens every single Rosh Chodesh in Eretz Yisrael? Do you know what happens? There is the most ridiculous and overwhelming Chilul Hashem at the Kosel HaMa'arabi, at the remnant, right? The women of the wall this, and the Charedim this, and the this, that. And by the way, everyone's wrong. Everyone's wrong. Everyone is wrong. Because everyone really doesn't care about the other. Now, what's the answer for the cultural compromise? I don't know, but that's a different shir. Right? But at the end of the day, what are we doing? What are we doing? Is it worth it to do something that is going to enrage the masses? And do you chas v'shalom spit at people, yell at people who are going to die? What's going on over here? What's going on over here? And where is leadership? Where is leadership on all sides to say we're all on the same team? We're all in the same boat. We're in the same people. We're all in the same gullahs. We're all waiting for the same Mashiach. We're all dealing with the same problems. We all suffer from the same terror attacks. We all suffer from the same collective broken heart from 2,000 years of tragedy. And what are we doing to each other every single Rosh Chodesh? Every single Rosh Chodesh. And I guarantee you, do you know what the Ribono Shel Olam is saying in Shamayim in that moment? I don't know, but I want to guess. And you know what he's saying? Do me a favor. All of you go home. Go home. I don't need you here if you're going to do this. I don't need you here if you're going to rip each other apart in my name. I don't need you here if you're going to deconstruct each other under some guise of piety. Go home. Go home. The Anani HaKavod, Aharon HaKohen created Anani HaKavod because he taught Jews how to be nice to each other. And if we could only once again recreate that formula, I guarantee you Mashiach would come tomorrow. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Rav Huna bar Manuach, Rav Shmuel bar Idi, Rav Chia mivastina, havu shchichi kamei drava. Both say it's a fascinating story. So listen to this. Rav Huna, by the way, Rav Shmuel Arman and I were talking about this yesterday. Both say, there's no Masechta like Taanis, no? I'm just saying, this is like, I even think if we charged admission, we would still have a full shul. Maybe not a bad idea. Okay, we'll talk about that afterwards. So I'll say, so this is just absolutely incredible. So the Gemara says, Rav Huna bar Manuach, Rav Shmuel bar Idi, and Rav Chia mivastina, havashchichi kamei derabba. These were all Tamidim of Rabbah. Kinach nafshei derabba, when Rabbah passed away, also kamei derabba. They came before Rav Papa, right? They took a new Rebbe, they came before Rav Papa. Kol emas tava amrlu shmaisa, v'lo hava mistaberlahu, hava meramzi ahadadi. So I will say this is fascinating because human nature is human nature. So what happened? Every single time Rav Papa said something that they didn't agree with, they made faces to each other, right? Or gestures to each other. I will say, as someone who speaks often in public, it is the most distracting thing in the world, right? Whoa, what's going on over here? What's going on? I'm right in the middle of talking about it over here. Wow, okay. You could have waited like another minute. Right? So what happened? What happened? So they're going ahead, and he's donating a kidney. I must be. So interesting enough. So what would happen is they would make faces at each other. Like when Rav Papa would say something they didn't disagree with. Whatever, a hand gesture, this, that. So what happens? Chalash Taitei. Rav Papa was very disturbed by it. I will say it happens to be. It's a very distracting thing when you're trying to think of a shirt. Somebody grimaces or this, that. So Rav Papa was very distressed by it. Remember, Rav Papa spending a lot of time preparing. These are three guys. They came to Rav Papa as their new Rebbe. And Chalash Taitei. Chalash Taitei means it was very upsetting to him. Amud Beis. So Akruye Bechalme. So wants to listen to this. One night, Rav Papa had a dream, and in the dream he saw the pasuk, and the pasuk said, "Va'achid es shloshes haroim." Va'achid shloshes haroim. So we'll say the pasuk that he saw in his dream was the pasuk that said, literally again, I will take. This is the pasuk we just quoted before. I will take the three shepherds. I will take the three shepherds. Rabbi say, what that dream meant was that these three Talmidei Chachamim, Rafuna bar Manoach, Moshe Idir Achim Vastina, were going to be taken from this world because of their disrespect to the Talmud Chacham Rav Papa. Because they had caused Rav Papa so much distress during the Shir, therefore again they were going to be taken from this world. So what happens? Lamachar. So both say, listen to this. This is incredible. So as Rav Papa do the next day, Lamachar ki havo mifteri minei. The next day, as they were leaving the base medrash, Amar Luhu Lizlu Rabbanon Lishalma. It's changed, by the way, in Agos, it's Siyumim. He said to them, the rabbis should go in peace. Lizlu Rabbanon Lishalma. So let's say, if you take a look at Rashi, Rashi says over here, Akruye Habamakrino Samikra Zebachal, Va'achin Lishosh Saron, V'yarach Echad, Shrotzim La'onshon V'shayim Mishum Demachzirei. Both say, by the way, it's so incredibly important. You know, the idea of the respect and reverence that we have to exhibit towards Talmidei Chachamim. So these Sirabonim, by the way, they weren't disrespecting. What were they doing? It was in the Beis Medrash. They were learning, and they were just disagreeing. You could disagree with something the Rebbe says, absolutely. It's not that they were disagreeing. It was the way that they were disagreeing. It was done in a disrespectful fashion. So because the disagreement was disrespectful, therefore, again, it was decreed in heaven that they were going to be their lives were going to be taken. Rav Papa sees them next day in Beis Medrash, he gives them a bracha. You should go in shalom. So Moshe, he didn't tell them about the dream, but he was giving them a bracha that they should be saved from any misfortune. Incredible, incredible. Was there another such story like this? Rasi Bar Ashi often went to the Shir Rav Papa. And this Rasi Bar Ashi always asked questions. Always had a question, right? And he would incessantly ask questions. Shabbos say, so again, and by the way, they might have even been good questions, but you know, sometimes the Rebbe's Rav Papa's trying to give a shir, right? And the guy's constantly, right? Rav Simra Ashe is constantly asking questions. Again, it's difficult. So what happened? The Moshe is incredible. Yom Achad, Chazi dinafal alape. One day he saw Rav Papa was about to say Tachnun, and Rav Papa uttered an additional supplication. Shami da Amar Rachmana Litzlan Mikisufa Disimi. Kadosh Baruch Hu saved me from the embarrassment of Simi. So Rav Papa was saying, it's difficult. Like he's always asking me questions. I can't get through what I want to get through. Sometimes I don't know the answers. And again, it's embarrassing. I'm trying to give a shir in front of the whole Beis Medrash of Talmidim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please save me from the embarrassment of Simi Bar Ashi. Rav Simi Bar Ashi overheard this tefillah. Kabil Alesh Tikusa V'Sulo Akshi. He took it on himself to be silent, and he did not question Rav Papa anymore in shir. Doesn't mean he didn't ask questions. It just probably means he just didn't ask questions in the public setting in shir. I will say, I want to point out, by the way, the connection to what we were saying to Aharon before is so profound as well. The idea of disagreeing agreeably, right? So that's the nature of these stories. Is the Talmud supposed to ask questions? Of course, the Talmud is supposed to ask questions. How do you learn if you don't ask questions? But the truth is how you ask the question. Sometimes people ask questions, and the question is the form of an attack, or the question is disparaging, or the question is mocking. So first of all, there's a way to ask a question, and also there's a time to ask a question. Are the questions encouraged? Not only encouraged, an absolute necessity. I can't learn without asking. But how I ask and when I ask ultimately, again, determines the lishma nature of the question. Even Reish Lakish holds that rain could come down in the merit of an individual. How do you know that rain is brought down even for an individual? Gemara quotes the pasuk, Shalom Hashem matar be'es malkosh Hashem oseh chazizim u'metargesh mitinish. So quoting the pasuk from Zechariah. So the Gemara says, Shalom Hashem matar be'es malkosh Hashem oseh chazizim. Chazizim also are clouds. Matar geshem mitin lahem leish eseb basada. So watch this. Look how we dash in the pasuk. Yochel. So the Gemara says, Yochel. So Yochel akol. You might have thought that rain only comes for everyone if everyone needs it. Talmud lomer leish. You know, Baruch brings rain even for one person. V'tanya, so you might have thought when he brings it for one person, fine, he'll bring it for one person, but he'll bring it for all of the fields of that person. To which the Gemara says, Talmud Lomar, Esev, Baruch even brings rain for one blade of grass. Did I skip? Talmud Sada, Sada, even one field. Ya'i Sada, if I would have said field, Yachal Achala Sada, you know, fine, Baruch will bring rain for one person for one whole field, but only a whole field. Talmud Lomar, Esev, therefore the pasuk says, even a blade of grass. Rabbi say that the bracha of rain is so personalized that even if a person only needs, right, rain, one person needs rain for one blade of grass, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring that rain for him. This is beautiful. First wide line of say, he had a garden. Kol yom ahava azal v'sayerla. Every day he would go out and inspect the garden. Amar ha-mishra bayamayo, v'ha-mishra lo bayamayo. Ultimately, again, he said, this patch requires water. This patch doesn't require water. V'asa mitra v'kamashki kol hecha demi bayle mayo. And isn't this incredible, right? And what happens? Sure enough, again, he would have rain that would come exactly where it was needed and didn't go where it wasn't needed. I will say, obviously, Abdinel Bakatina, great tzaddik, koachat tefillah. But the idea being that rain is the type of bracha that could be highly personalized. The Gemara is contrasting this with what we call parnasa. Right, so parnasa, so let's say the specific amount of grain that is going to come into the world, that may be fixed. Again, the allocation may be fluid, but the amount itself is fixed. So the Gemara says, Maya Hashem osech hazizim. What does it mean in the pasuk when it says Hashem makes clouds? What does that mean? Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, Malami shekol tzaddik v'tzaddik HaKadosh Baruch Hu oseh lechaziz bifnei atzmo. Both say this is beautiful. Every tzaddik gets his own cloud. Every tzaddik gets his own cloud. In other words, we'll say, so linking up with the idea that rain is a very personalized blessing, every tzaddik gets his own cloud. So we'll say, my chazizim, what are chazizim? Am Rav Yehuda, parchos, floating clouds. But Am Rav Yochanan, sim. So we'll say, by the way, I'll just point out, it's interesting, because you also know clouds don't just represent rain. What else do clouds represent? What do they represent? So sometimes clouds represent adversity, right? Cloudiness, gloominess. So also understand when the Gemara says that every tzaddik has his own cloud, which means every tzaddik has his own pekel, has his own bundle of challenges. There's no such thing as a tzaddik who doesn't have challenges. There's no such thing as a person who doesn't have challenges. Every person has their own cloud of bracha, and every person also has their own cloud of life challenges. So the Gemara goes right there. My chazizim are the parchos. On Rabbi Yochanan, similar matter, parchos. So the sign of rain, right? The sign of impending rain are parchos, are the floating clouds. My parchos, Amra Papa, Eva Kalisha. So I'll say parchos are thin clouds, thinner clouds. So Eva Kalisha, to say Eva Samichta. They're thin clouds that are underneath thicker clouds. Good. Amra Yehuda, Nehila Mikame Mitra, Asi Mitra. So the Gemara says like this, very interesting. When these thin clouds, right? When these thin clouds come before Nehila Mikamecha. So we'll say here actually the Gemara says Nehila means like a soft rain. When there's soft rain, ultimately again that becomes before more intense rain, that is a sign of sustained rain. Basar Mitra, when soft rain comes after harder rain, Pasik Mitra means that the rain is going to end. Mikamei Mitra, Asi Mitra. So what does it mean when the soft rain comes before the harder rain? That is a sign of sustained rains going ahead. So the way to remember this is a sieve. Because so often what will happen in a sieve is the finer stuff comes out first, right? And then the coarser stuff comes out afterwards. So the idea is when there's soft rain and then harder rain, that shows it's going to be a period of sustained rain. The Basar Mitra, Pasik Mitra. But when soft rain comes after harder rain, that shows that the rain is going to end. Visimarech, the way to remember this is Charya Deizi, goat dung. This is a very good mnemonic, right? Goat dung. So apparently, again, Rashi explains that when a goat defecates, apparently the large pieces come out before the small pieces. Okay, good to know. Hey, so again, remember, once upon a time, these things were helpful. Okay, so I'm just pointing out, again, for us, the shaykhs might be a little bit more, but good, you get the metaphor. So anyway, the Gemara says as follows. Ula ikla Babel, we'll say it's incredible. Ula went to Babel. This is really a very strong Gemara. Chaza parchos. So Rabba saw these thin clouds. Amr lehu, pani mani dahashta asi mitra. So he saw the thin clouds are normally a sign for rain. He said, quick, bring my stuff inside because it's going to rain. L'sof lo asi mitra. Then it didn't rain. Amar ki hachi de meshakri bavloi, hachi meshakri mitrai. The same way the Babylonians are liars, their rain clouds are liars as well. So I will say, so again, this highlights, by the way, there was a significant amount of animosity between the Jews of Eretz Yisrael and the Jews of Babel, right? I will say, which again is, it's part of the same tragedy. Like, we're always factionalized. This is just always the way that it's been from the times that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Before the times, this is why the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. For whatever reason, everyone has someone who they dislike. So you see over here also, like, there wasn't a high opinion of the Babylonian Jews in the eyes, ultimately, again, of the Eretz Yisrael Jews. So again, it's possible, by the way, that Ula is not talking about the Jews of Babel, but rather he's just talking about Babylonians in general. But the idea being that Babylonians are liars and their rain clouds are liars. Okay, Gemara says, Ula ikla Babel. One time Ula went to Babel. Chazi malat sana de tamri bezuzah. He saw that you could buy a basket full of dates for one zuz. Now, both say, now dates are interesting because dates, now what do you say? Dates are cheap. And also when you eat dates sustain, dates nourish. So Ula was fascinated that you could buy a basket full of nourishing food for a cheap amount of money. Right? Well, say this is very, one of the major, social agenda items in Eretz Yisrael now is the price of food. Right? Food prices are going up. So it's interesting. So Ula comes from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, right? And he says it's amazing. You get a basket of dates for one zuz. So the Gemara says, how could it be that the Babylonians aren't learning Torah en masse? Right? If you could sustain yourself for such little money, for such a small amount of money, one zuz gets you a basket of dates, and dates sustain you. How is it that all the Babylonians aren't sitting and learning Torah? So Ula ate a basket of dates. But Araisa, so the Gemara says, Balayla Tsaruhu. That night he had terrible stomach pains as a result of the dates. Rashi says he suffered from diarrhea as a result of the dates. So what happens? He says, Amar Mali Tsanas the Sakina Bezuza Ubavloi Aski Baraisa. You buy a basket of knives for one zuz, and the Babylonians are still learning Torah. So afterwards, he was amazed that the Babylonians have the ability to learn Torah at all, given the fact that what they have to sustain themselves on wreaks havoc on the digestive system. I will say, isn't it fascinating, right? In the beginning of the day, so Ula's calling out the Babylonians. You could sustain yourself for such a small amount of money, yet you don't sit and learn. And then he realized he was wrong. That night, he suffers the effects of the dates. It's true, they're cheap. There's a reason why they're cheap, right? So then he suffers the results of the dates, and he realizes, wow, it's amazing that the Babylonians learned Torah at all, given the fact that apparently these dates were a major part of their diet. Let's say an incredible thing in perspective. Sometimes you see something the first time, you think you've got it all figured out, right? I've got it all figured out. I figured out people, I figured out situations, and then you delve a little bit more into it, and you realize, I know nothing. Or what I thought to be true was in fact not true at all. Incredible, humbling Musa. So Gemara goes right to Tanya. Rabbi Eliezer Yomer, Kola Olam Kulo, Mimei Okainus Ushose. The entire world is sustained from the waters of the Okainus. Okainus is the ocean. Okay, we can translate it as Atlantic, but the truth is it actually represents a body of water that's larger. We'll call it the Atlantic, right? The Okainus. Shene'emar, Ve'ed Ya'ala Min Ha'aretz V'hishkas K'penei Kol Ha'adama. So we'll say, so in Rabbi Eliezer's model, he believes that rain ultimately, again, comes from the earth. The waters of the earth evaporate, go into the heavens, and then rain down like that. Quotes the Pasuk from Bereshis, a mist will rise up from the earth and will water the entire earth. But the ocean water is salty. Ocean water is salty and the rain is not. The clouds sweeten the rain. The clouds sweeten the water. So we'll say that this is Rabbi Eliezer. This is Rabbi Yoshua Omer, no. Called the Olam Kulo Mimayim Ha'alyonim Ushos. It's not true. The earth is watered through the celestial waters. We'll say, remember again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates the Rakia, and the point of the Rakia was to divide between the upper waters and the lower waters. Rabbi Yeshua says, rain comes from the upper waters in Shamayim. Shnei Amar, Lamatara Shamayim Tishta Mayim. Come over here, quotes the pasuk. Quotes the pasuk. Limtar Shamayim Tishta from Devarim. Right, literally again, from the dew of the heavens will the earth drink. Elamani Mekayim Ve'egyala Min Ha'aretz. So what do you do with the pasuk that says that the mist will come up from the earth? Malamed Shanonim Miskabrim V'Olim L'Rakia. It means that the clouds become strong, rise up to the heavens. Literally, again, the clouds open their mouths. Kinud, like a nud is a wineskin. What happens? And then they receive the moisture or the water from the celestial water. And they are perforated just like a sieve. Ubaos umachashros ma'am agabe karka, and they showered down their water upon the earth. Shneimar chashras mayim avesh chakim. Ve'ein bein tipa la tipa ela kamalinema, and there is not more than literally again a hair's breadth in between each drop. Lamdecha, to teach us shegal yom hagishamim, that a day of rain is as great kiyom shenivra ubo shamayim ba'aretz, as the day that the earth was created. Shneimar oseh gidolos ad necheker uksiv hanosing matra panei kol haaretz uksiv la'alan halo yadatim lo shamata elokei olam Hashem ein cheker l'svunaso. Shabbosai, here we have a fundamental machlokes, and the fundamental machlokes is, where does the rain come from? You have Rabbi Eliezer saying that rain comes, right, water comes up from the earth, right, water evaporates from the earth, and ultimately, again, is in the wording of the Gemara, sweetened in the clouds, and then comes down in the form of rain. Rabbi Yoshua is saying the mist, the clouds rise up from the earth, go up to the heavens, they're like a wineskin, receives the waters from the celestial waters, and then they become like a sieve and allow that water to come down. We'll have to stop over here for today. We'll pick up Emirat Hashem with the rest of this discussion. Emirat Hashem tomorrow. Shkach Habosai.
I'm hesitant to ask this question because it might generate the eyes maybe a little chutzpah.
That's Shalom.
Sefer Yoshua clearly says a month stop later, not at this point. But the Gemara doesn't even
address it. Yeah. So it seems that what ended up the postscript is after Moshe Rabbeinu died, they got back the man. It's not clear it is in the schus of Yoshua and the schus of Klal Yisrael. So it did come back, but I believe there's a medrash that says that there was a lapse.
So it came back, presumably on somebody else's.
On somebody else's cheshbon, correct.
Another question unrelated, but similar, maybe a little closer on this week's parsha, right? Rashi says in Lavan Garti,